These are each a day. And there's 360 of them in one round. And here, there are 260 teeth. Now, each one of those days has a very specific spiritual meaning. The Mayan calendar and this tool that I've produced actually explains all those sacred meanings every day. But this cycle, going around, turns this one. There are no planets or moons going around in our solar system every 360 days around the sun. So this calendar as well was not keeping track of any physical motion. What were these guys timing? That's the big mystery that Mr. Coleman and myself have helped solve. Well, and everybody else that came up with scientific facts and breakthroughs along the way. Here's what they were timing. This is what kind of looks like a pyramid. It's a graphical display of a calendar stone that the Maya left in a city called Koba some 2,500 years ago. They carved periods of time that represented the stages of the calendar, of the Mayan calendar. And each one of these 9 levels is further divided into 13 sections. Can you see those on the bottom? 13 sections. They go in days and nights. That means there's 7 days and 6 nights to each level of creation. We've heard that one somewhere before. 7 days. This first cycle began 16.4 billion years ago. This is called the cellular cycle. The cellular cycle, because way over here, in that magical 13th section, which is actually 1.26 billion years long, we're still living in that 1.26 billion years. Everything that's happened, of course, all of human history has happened in the very later sections of that 1.26 billion years. What happened right here, though, was the first form of cellular life. There were bacteria and viruses before, but there were the cells. The very next stage of creation started 820 million years ago. Now, this is carved in a rock in the Yucatan Peninsula by the Maya. They said that the next stage in consciousness started here. And life sciences will tell you that this is when animals first appeared. Not animals with 4 legs, but multicellular groups of cells working in cooperation for survival. The first multicellular organisms started right here. And evolution, going through these 1 through 13, made change after change after change to produce man. As a matter of fact, each one of these stages is 63.5, approximately, million years long. Each one of those 1 through 13 is 63.5 million years long. Coincidentally, life sciences find that there are major jumps forward in the structure and function of consciousness in animals every 63.5 years, or million years. Here, this one is 41 million years ago, It's called the familiar or familial cycle. This was another stage of consciousness where over 41 million years, consciousness built the relationship of family. We'll go through this just really quick, the different kinds of consciousness that were the result of this. Each day and night, each one of these 13 was 3.2 million years long. Two million years ago, we started building a tribal consciousness. This is where cells group together for survival in this stage and further develop. Then there were a further organization of organisms into family groups. Then these family groups organized into tribes. Every 160,000 years was one of these steps. The cultural stage started 102,000 years ago. This, by the way, is when we learn to speak with one another. Each day and night was 8,000 years long. The national section started 3115 BC. This is the birthday of Egypt. It's also the birthday of writing. It's also the beginning of the age of bronze. Every 394 years was one of these steps of 1 through 13. The planetary section started in 1755. And this whole section went through its stages every 19.7 years. The galactic cycle started January 5th, 1999. And in case you haven't noticed, things are changing quicker. In fact, we go through one of those days and nights every 360 days. The same amount of change that happened over 1.26 billion years at the beginning of this now happens in every 360 days. There is a dramatic acceleration going on here, folks. Universal consciousness. February 10th, 2011, we start this consciousness cycle. And during that cycle, the same amount of change that is taking place in a year, in 360 days, will happen in 20 days. And it will get much faster than that. That's how fast it is when it starts. And it goes faster and faster. Just like this cycle is going faster and faster. But the most important thing is to know where we're going. Especially if you're going faster and faster. Isn't it? Okay, well, kind of to figure out where you're going, sometimes you look at where you've been. If you've already gone through Galveston, then you know you're not going to Galveston. And let's go through this consciousness cycle, these different kinds of consciousness that happened in these different cycles. Down here in the very beginning, this was all just action, reaction. Just action and then reaction. No thinking about it. That was the level of consciousness. If you drop a ball, it bounces. Heat and chemical bonds or debondings happen at certain times. Action, reaction. That was the level of consciousness that happened over and over again, developing and developing until it actually produced the miracle of life. Then, the miracle of life, that state of consciousness became stimulus response. Stimulus response as opposed to action-reaction. It's a higher evolved means of dealing with the environment. And it took some 820 million years to develop it. Here, we went into individual stimulus and response. Or stimulus individual response. Where here, things were grouped together as nests, hives, flocks, schools, herds. The whole body responded as one. Here, though, came the concept of individual. And it is that concept that allows you to have a family relationship rather than just being one of the pack or one of the hive. There is an interpersonal communication and relationship between individuals. This is a huge step for consciousness. In this cycle, we started being able to see similarities and differences. This is the purpose of your mind, to look at similarities and differences and come up with decisions about your future. And that has been developed over the last 2 million years. In the cultural stage, consciousness started coming up with reasons for things to exist. Why is there rain? What are the stars? What is fire?